What's the most disturbing secret you've discovered about someone close to you? Story 1. The 24 hours before my dad passed away from stage 4 lung cancer were heartbreaking. He was admitted to the ER and then moved to the ICU. Due to strict hospital COVID rules, my mother, sister, and I weren't allowed to be by his side. Throughout the day, we called and texted him repeatedly, but he never responded. My mother even contacted the hospital and spoke with one of his ICU nurses, who reassured us that he was awake and communicating normally. Sadly, he passed away very suddenly at 3:30 a.m. the following morning. By the time we were allowed to be with him, he was no longer conscious. We said our goodbyes and he was gone. Later that morning, while my mom rested, I began making arrangements for his cremation and sorting through the belongings the hospital had returned to us. Among them was his phone. Seeking comfort, I decided to read through our final text to him. To my surprise, none of our messages had been read. Not mine, my mother's, or my sister's. I assumed he was too weak or in too much pain to respond. As I scrolled through his phone, I noticed a chat app I had vaguely heard of but never used. Out of curiosity, I opened it and saw a single contact with a woman's name. As I read through their messages, I realized my father had been in constant contact with this person during his final hours and as far back as I could scroll. Their conversation was deeply personal, filled with terms of endearment like princess and declarations of love. She expressed concern for his condition, asking why he was in the ER and how he was feeling. I scrolled back far enough to realize this was more than just a friendship. It was at least an emotional affair. My grief turned into a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. A week later, I tracked the woman down and contacted her through direct messages. She revealed that she was 19 years old and had met my dad when she was just 17. He had been her high school bus driver. According to her, they had been dating for nearly 2 years. My dad was 66 years old. Learning that he spent his last moments communicating with someone so young, someone younger than his own grandchildren, was devastating. I hope it brought him some happiness in his final days, but it left me with a bitter truth I'll have to carry for the rest of my life. A truth that casts a shadow over my entire relationship with him, one I'll never have the chance to confront or make peace with. It's the one secret I wish I had never uncovered. Story 2. She was my best friend for 7 years. We'd been through everything together. When I moved out of state with my now husband, she convinced us both to return so we could be closer to her. After about a year of living away, we didn't have any strong ties to our new location, so we thought, why not? She was practically family. Moving back felt like the right decision. It was the happiest I'd been in a long time. She was at our house almost every night for dinner, and we spent countless hours laughing and enjoying each other's company. That first year back was perfect. But then things began to change. Slowly, she started driving a wedge between my husband and me. Whenever we argued, which like any couple we occasionally did, she would text both of us, validating each of our perspectives and subtly fostering resentment between us. With me, she planted the idea of a backup plan, saying that if my husband and I didn't work out, I could move in with her. She'd tell me how great our life together would be. Meanwhile, with my husband, she began bringing up her struggles with infertility and how she wanted a child who looked just like him, hinting that she simply needed a sperm donor. All of this came to light around the same time. My husband and I compared messages, piecing together her manipulative behavior. Her goal became disturbingly clear. She wanted his sperm and envisioned raising a child with me as her partner. When we confronted her, she denied everything and lashed out at both of us. Things escalated quickly. She started showing up uninvited, banging on our door, demanding to be let in. The situation became so terrifying and anxiety-inducing that we had no choice but to move and change our phone numbers. It's deeply unsettling to look back on someone I considered family, someone I trusted implicitly, and realize how toxic and obsessive her feelings toward me were. She cared, yes, but in a way that was unhealthy and frightening. That chapter of my life taught me a hard lesson about trust and boundaries. Story 3. After my great-uncle passed away, my family made a shocking discovery. While cleaning out his attic, we found a chest containing photos and memorabilia from his time as a Grand Wizard in the KKK. The chest held images of rallies, lynchings, and cross burnings, all taking place in rural Alabama. We were horrified and deeply disturbed, and suddenly many things about his behavior made sense. like his negativity toward his black hospice nurse, who had always been kind and compassionate to him and our family. When the discovery came to light, my family, overwhelmed with shame and disbelief, decided to burn everything. I was 16 at the time and had no say in the matter, but the adults in my family felt it was the best way to deal with the weight of what they had found. We held prayer vigils through our church to honor the victims of his hatred and to pray for healing. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if we should have preserved some of the evidence to provide closure to those affected by his actions. At the time, however, my family's priority was to sever ties with his legacy and erase him from our history. His gravestone was removed to prevent anyone from commemorating him, and he has been entirely omitted from our family records. My family has always prided itself on being inclusive. My ancestors were active in the civil rights movement, and one of my great-grandfathers was even involved in the Underground Railroad. For us, this discovery was a painful contradiction to everything we believed about our family. It's a heavy burden to bear, but we have tried to reconcile it by focusing on our actions today and honoring the values of inclusion and equality. Story 4. This isn't exactly a secret someone confided in me, but rather unsettling comments made by a family member about a notorious murder case in the Midwest. The case involved victims who were killed and reportedly fed to pigs, and although the murderers were caught, little to no remains were ever recovered. Over the years, this family member has occasionally made vague remarks about the case. Their comments never reveal anything incriminating or provide new information, but the serious and hushed tone they use has always left me uneasy. It's as if they might know more than they're letting on, whether firsthand or through someone else. The situation feels even more eerie considering their background. At the time of the murders, this relative worked at a slaughterhouse owned by another family member, who also happened to be an ex-biker and somewhat of a mysterious figure in their own right. This relative seems to relish making people uncomfortable, often recounting the gory details of animal processing, especially pigs, at the dinner table. While it's possible their comments stem from a fascination with true crime or the rumors that tend to flourish in rural communities, I can't shake the feeling there's more to the story. Perhaps they know something they're hesitant to share, or perhaps it's all just unsettling talk. Either way, I'm tempted to gently probe the next time I see them. Maybe they'll finally open up, or maybe it's better left alone. Story 5. My best friend of 25 years once confessed to me that they believed they were a sociopath, and they said it with pride. Their declaration was followed by an exuberant, "I don't give a fuck about anyone but myself." I was taken aback and immediately tried to convince them otherwise, pointing out examples of their care for others. But as the years went by and life became more chaotic, I started to distance myself and observe them more closely. Eventually, I realized they had been right all along. Not only were they a sociopath, but they had been abusive, manipulative, and toxic to me for decades. They brought around some of the worst people imaginable, people who would try to ruin your life and isolate you if you disagreed with them. Over time, the passive-aggressive stabs and emotional manipulation piled up until one day, I finally woke up to who they truly were. It wasn't a sudden revelation, it was a long, gradual process. But when the moment came, I cut them out of my life completely. The healing process has been slow, but liberating. Looking back, it felt like I had been on a slow, intravenous drip of poison for decades, and pulling the IV out allowed me to step into the light. Life has been brighter ever since. Story 6. My mom's side of the family has an odd way of dealing with trauma. They turn horrific events into humorous stories to share at gatherings. It's their coping mechanism, I suppose, but it's jarring to hear. For example, stories about my grandfather trying to shoot my grandmother in front of their kids, or my mom being beaten for saying Billy D. Williams was attractive, were told at Christmas parties, even when I was a child. The only things that don't get turned into fun stories are the events too dark or incomprehensible to process. Those get buried, and I've only caught glimpses of them over the years. One of those glimpses was when my grandmother casually mentioned that my grandfather had been in the KKK, participated in lynchings, and was really proud of his skill at it. Another was learning later in life that the only reason I saw him growing up, while none of my cousins did, was because he knew where my mom lived but didn't know about his other children's families. Not visiting him wasn't an option for us. Looking back, it all makes sense now. The eerie vibe of his house, the odd behaviors of the people around him. Like the mute grandkids of his new wife, playing with dead rats dressed in Barbie clothes in a dollhouse made of driftwood. It was a deeply unsettling environment, one I now realize was as strange as it felt at the time. Oh, see her was he nowhere. Story 7. My husband, then fiancé, and I spent a couple of years teaching in rural Alaska, a challenging but rewarding adventure. We befriended a colleague, an older single man, who seemed kind and friendly. We often had dinner at his house, went hiking, and even joined him for target shooting at a local beach. He took on an uncle-like role in our lives, and we even stayed at his house in the city once while on vacation. During our second year, he introduced us to a young woman he claimed was his niece. She lived with him, saying she was taking online classes to graduate after having trouble living with her father. This explanation seemed plausible, and she confirmed the story to me and other women in the village. However, by spring, she left suddenly. He claimed she had patched things up with her father and returned home. The truth came out later. The girl wasn't his niece. She was an underage girl he had groomed online. Her father eventually tracked her down after she contacted a local woman for help. A state trooper escorted her home. She had been missing for 8 months. The situation didn't end there. The following summer, he faced court for the incident, and soon after, it was revealed that he had attempted to lure another underage girl online. This time, it turned out the entire interaction was part of an FBI sting operation. What had started as a seemingly friendly relationship with a colleague turned into one of the most disturbing revelations of my life. Story 8. I have almost no interaction with my extended family, and honestly, I'm fine with it. They've proven themselves to be untrustworthy and indifferent to me. I only keep my mom, dad, and one brother close. The rest are irrelevant. Over the years, I've learned the hard way not to trust people, especially family, as it has cost me time, money, and peace of mind. Cutting ties has been liberating, and I don't regret losing touch with them. Their betrayal runs deep. They allowed terrible things to happen to my father, their own brother, and perpetuated spiteful treatment even after my grandfather passed away. My step-grandfather inherited money and a house that had originally been left by my father's real family to care for him. When my grandmother died when I was 8, all her assets went to her husband. When he passed, he left the money and property to everyone except my family because, in their eyes, we weren't related. It didn't matter that this was money meant for my father's care. It was stolen from him. Years later, they reached out asking to let bygones be bygones. I refused. They had profited from injustice, and the money that was rightfully meant for my father was taken by someone who never worked for it and lived off the inheritance. To this day, I hold firm. Their father was a usurper who stole my father's rightful inheritance, and I will not forgive them for perpetuating that hate and betrayal. Story 9. My father's life was a mess of infidelity and deceit. He cheated on my brother's mother with my mom, though my mom didn't know at the time. They got married, and I was born on their first wedding anniversary. But that didn't stop him from continuing his pattern of infidelity. He cheated on my mom with multiple women throughout their marriage. Even when he was visiting his dying mother, my grandmother, in her final days of battling cancer, he found time to meet up with other women, while my mom and I returned home for her funeral preparations. After leaving my mom, he remarried in Mexico to someone who was the same age as my brother from his first marriage. Years later, in 2011, he passed away from a heart attack while driving on the freeway. In his final moments, he managed to park the car safely before succumbing. After his death, my brother and I went through his belongings, including his phone, and what we found wasn't surprising. He was cheating on his current wife in Mexico. The names in his contact list, boss, lawyer, and others, were all covers for women he was seeing. We scrolled through the messages, unsurprised by their content. In the end, we decided to do him one final favor. We erased everything from his phone. He was a player until the day he died. A scumbag, yes, but his past, from what I've heard, was troubled. That, however, is a story for another time. Story 10. About 6 to 7 years ago, I found myself in a tough housing situation. The letting agency for my flat announced renovations and kicked me and my horrible flatmate out. Desperate to find a new place, I posted an ad for potential flatmates. A guy I recognized from anime conventions responded, and we agreed to meet up to discuss living arrangements. I vaguely knew him from cons, never a promising start, and had chatted with him a few times over drinks. We were even Facebook friends, and he had mutual connections with some of my closest friends. We met for Chinese food, and during the conversation, he casually mentioned having dissociative episodes where he'd wake up with no memory of what he'd done or where he'd been. He added that once he woke up with blood on his hands and no idea how it got there. I played it cool, responding with something like, "Yeah, that's not ideal." But internally, I decided immediately, I am absolutely not moving in with this guy. A few weeks later, I started hearing vague references from mutual friends about an incident involving this guy at an anime convention. None of them would go into detail, saying there was an active investigation. It didn't surprise me considering his odd behavior, but I didn't press for details. Time passed and I largely forgot about it until a few years later when someone messaged me, urging me to unfriend him because he had been convicted of violently raping a girl at knife point in a side room during an anime convention. He'd been sentenced to prison, and suddenly everything clicked. Mutual friends who had known him since their early teens finally opened up. When the allegations surfaced, he had claimed the victim was lying and insisted he was innocent. They cautiously believed him at first, saying nothing to anyone except the authorities. However, when they attended the trial, they were horrified by the overwhelming evidence of his guilt. Police had found a bag in his possession containing a knife, rope, duct tape, and other items. A chilling, premeditated kit. Even more disturbingly, they learned that the girl he attacked wasn't his intended victim. His target had been a girl one of my friends was dating at the time, whom he believed was leading him on. He even admitted he had considered murdering her. I didn't know the victim personally, but I can only imagine the trauma she endured. The revelation shattered my mutual friends, who had to come to terms with the fact that someone they had been close to for years was capable of such monstrous acts. The fallout extended beyond the crime itself. One girl who had initially expressed disbelief that he could do such a thing faced anonymous death threats from people who thought she was denying his guilt. This experience gave me a harrowing glimpse into the trauma and complexity of such situations. It wasn't just about the crime, but also the ripple effect it had on everyone connected to the perpetrator and the victim. It was a dark and sobering chapter that reminded me how little we truly know about the people we think we understand. Story 11. A childhood friend of mine once confessed something to me that has stayed on my mind for years. While she was heavily pregnant with her third child, she admitted to having slept with her boyfriend's best friend one night when she was extremely drunk. I didn't think much of it at first, until her third child was born. Unlike her first two kids, who have brown hair and eyes like both parents, this baby had blue eyes and ginger hair, features that perfectly matched the best friend, not the boyfriend. My friend had a history of drinking too much and ending up in regrettable situations as a teenager, so this incident wasn't entirely out of character. She told me it happened just once, and from what I know, both of them were incredibly drunk. I encouraged her to tell her boyfriend, but she never did, and as far as I know, he has no idea. Their relationship was strange to begin with. They were dating but didn't act like a couple, didn't live together, and he didn't contribute much to raising their two confirmed children. In fact, despite earning a good income, her boyfriend left her struggling financially, with barely enough money to buy decent clothes for herself. Around the time the third baby was born, the boyfriend's father passed away, which only added to the complicated dynamics. I'm not sure if her boyfriend ever suspected anything, or if he even cares, given the nature of their relationship. It's not that I condone cheating. I'm firmly against it, but I don't feel like it's my place to interfere. No paternity test has ever confirmed anything, and I've been out of contact with both of them for years now. Sometimes I wonder if the truth will ever come out, or if it's better left buried, given how disconnected and fragile their relationship already seemed. Story 12. This isn't disturbing, but it's one of the most shocking things I've ever learned about my family. My great-grandfather, who passed away when I was about 8, never spoke about his time in the military. We knew he had served in World War I as a 17-year-old. He lied about his age to enlist. And we knew he was wheelchair-bound due to injuries he sustained. Beyond that, he never shared any details of his experiences. After his death, my parents were sorting through his belongings when they found something incredible. A Victoria Cross, the highest British military award for bravery in the face of the enemy. Curious, they did some research and uncovered the story behind it. He had fought at the Battle of the Somme. He received the Victoria Cross for his heroism, but he never told anyone. Not his wife, not his children, not his grandchildren. He never wanted recognition or praise for his actions. I imagine he didn't want to relive those traumatic moments, and he likely believed he was simply doing what anyone would have done for their friend. The quiet strength and humility of men like him from that era is something I deeply admire. They were truly made of different stuff. Story 13. This feels like something out of a daytime soap opera, but it's my life. I hope this all makes sense. My parents have been married for over 30 years. About 10 years ago, when I was 27, I found out a huge family secret. My mother was married to someone else when she was 19 and had a daughter with him, my half-sister, Claire. Up until that moment, my parents had pretended she didn't exist. I had no idea she was out there. At the same time, I also learned that my eldest brother, Sam, is actually my half-brother. Sam had always seemed distant, leaving home when I was very young and returning briefly when I was 16, only to disappear again after an argument with my parents when I was 18. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why my parents were so critical of him and why he cut ties with them. The revelation came when Claire reached out to my other brother, Peter, on Facebook and told him point blank that she was our half-sister. Peter was furious, which forced my parents to come clean. During the conversation, my mother casually mentioned that Sam was also her first husband's son. When I asked her, wait, so Sam is my half-brother? She responded with a dismissive, well, duh. She turned on the waterworks, and at the time I comforted her. But over the last decade, I've grown to resent my parents for hiding so much. They claim they were protecting us, but I'm certain they just never intended to tell us. Claire's story is heartbreaking. When my mom married my dad, they tolerated Sam but completely rejected Claire. She ran away from home several times before my grandmother took her in permanently. My grandmother, whom I only met twice in my life, raised Claire from the time she was 4. Now I understand why my mom avoided all contact with my grandmother and grandfather when I was growing up. To this day, my parents pretend everything is fine, but I haven't been able to recover from their betrayals. My mother's texts give me anxiety. I moved 2 hours away 8 years ago, and they've never offered to visit me. Yet they expect me to visit every Christmas and guilt-trip me when I don't. Writing this is making my heart race, but it feels good to finally put it into words. Thank you to anyone who took the time to read this. It means more than you know. Story 14. My youngest brother, who everyone saw as a sweet, sensitive kid, shocked us all when we learned he had been having an affair with his girlfriend's mom. He even called her mom before they ran off together to get married after his girlfriend caught them in bed. To make matters worse, he was later kicked out of the army because his girlfriend's dad, an army chaplain, discovered the affair and reported him. Apparently, the army doesn't take kindly to officers sneaking around with other men's wives, and my brother had already been warned multiple times. We didn't know the full story at first. He had told us he was dropping out of high school in his senior year to live with his girlfriend's family until they were both 18 and could get married. My parents were concerned and tried to change his mind, even taking him to counseling. However, during a private session, the counselor expressed concerns that my brother might hurt himself or our parents, so they reluctantly let him go. Not long after, he sent us a letter saying he never wanted to hear from any of us again. A few months later, everything blew up. His girlfriend caught him with her mother, and he was discharged from the army. While cleaning out his room to make space for a baby, we discovered a stash of items he had stolen from us, and letters where he detailed how much he hated everyone in the family, except me, whom he referred to as a lonely loser. The latest update we've heard is that he now works at Home Depot, married his ex-girlfriend's mom, moved in with her mother, and is considering going to electrician school. Despite telling us he never wanted contact, he's apparently bitter that my parents haven't tried to reach out to him. My parents are devastated, but have chosen to respect his wishes for no contact. Everything we know about him now comes from mutual friends, his ex-girlfriend, and his mommy wife's Facebook updates. It's a bizarre and painful situation for the whole family, and none of us know how to make sense of it. Story 15. When I was in 8th grade, my dad started his own business. Around the same time, my grandfather tragically committed suicide. He was kept on life support for 6 months before passing away, and the aftermath of his death seemed to set off a chain of events that unraveled our family's stability. Shortly after my grandfather's death, my dad's business went under. We had to file for bankruptcy, lost all our savings, and even had to give up our car. Eventually, we moved to a different city and into a small apartment. My dad found a new job, but the transition was incredibly difficult. The financial strain and emotional toll had long-lasting effects on our family, lasting for over a decade. For years, my dad told me that we lost everything because of my grandfather's death. The medical bills, the time away from work, and the stress that followed. Believing that narrative fueled my passion for suicide prevention charities. I felt like I understood firsthand the ripple effects of such a tragedy. However, after my dad passed away, I was sorting through his papers and uncovered a lawsuit he had been involved in. It turned out that he had been sued for aggressively sexually harassing a female graphic designer at his business. She had filed a complaint, and when he fired her in retaliation, she sued him. He lost the case, and the resulting legal and financial fallout had bankrupted us. This all happened right before my grandfather's death. Learning the truth after so many years was devastating. The story I had clung to, the one that shaped my understanding of our family's struggles, was only partially true. My grandfather's death was undoubtedly tragic, but it wasn't the sole reason we lost everything. It's hard to reconcile the father I thought I knew with the man I discovered in those documents. Story 16. For 23 years, I believed my dad hated me and loved my brother. My childhood and teenage years were brutal. The only time he spoke to me was when he was yelling. We'd sit across from each other at the dinner table, never making eye contact, and I think we might have exchanged words twice a year, even while living under the same roof. But with my brother, he was affectionate, close, and warm. It tore me apart. I grew to hate him deeply, but it messed with my head because I hated that I hated him. And I knew he hated me even worse. It wasn't until my grandmother, who was like a mom and best friend rolled into one, finally told me the truth when I was 23. She revealed that he wasn't actually my biological dad. My real dad had left before I was born, and my mom met the man I called Dad when I was 1. Once my brother was born, his biological son, he resented me completely and treated me like I didn't belong. I was relieved to know the truth, but also deeply embarrassed. Growing up, friends would often ask me if he was my real dad because of the way he treated me. I always defended him, saying, "Of course he is. My mom wouldn't lie to me about that." But she had. No matter how bad things got, she never said a word. It left me with deep trust issues and a lifetime of wondering why no one told me sooner. Story 17. Back in 2010, my brother and I spent summer break with our grandmother, our dad's mom. A couple of weeks after we returned home, my grandmother called our mom, furious, claiming I had stolen $7,000 from a safe at her house. I was completely clueless about what she was talking about, but thankfully, my mom defended me. She told my grandma there was zero evidence to suggest I took it and that she didn't believe I would do such a thing. But my grandma wouldn't budge. She was convinced it was me and declared I was never allowed back in her house and that she didn't want to see me anymore. She insisted that the money was for something important and made it clear I was exiled from the family. From that moment on, my grandmother didn't speak to me for 7 years, not until 2017 when I had my first child. Here's the kicker. Earlier this year, I found out it wasn't me who took the money. It was my brother. And even though she found out the truth back in 2011, less than a year after the incident, she never confronted him about it. She didn't cut him off, didn't demand the money back, and didn't even apologize to me. Instead, she continued to shut me out for another 6 years while maintaining a close relationship with my brother. What hurts even more is that my dad's entire side of the family knew the truth the whole time. They knew I was innocent and had been wrongfully blamed, yet no one ever tried to make it right or welcome me back. They let me remain the scapegoat while my brother stayed in their good graces. For 12 years, I was punished for something I didn't do, and to this day, no one has apologized or acknowledged the harm they caused. It's a betrayal I don't think I'll ever fully recover from. Story 18. My cousin had a full-ride football scholarship and a bright future, but he gave it all up out of loyalty to his then-girlfriend, now wife. She had accused the star quarterback of rape, and when the school investigated and dismissed the case, he dropped out in solidarity with her. A few years and a baby later, she confessed it was a lie. She had slept with the quarterback and didn't want to admit to cheating. Not long after, she left my cousin, claiming she felt like she missed out on fun by getting married so young. She partied with her college friends while my cousin worked and raised their child on his own. Eventually, she came back around, and despite everything, he accepted her. Then things got even worse. She accused him of domestic violence, providing fake evidence in court with photos of injuries that were obviously altered, like a black eye switching sides of her face. The case made it to pre-trial but was thrown out when her lies were uncovered. In court, she admitted she fabricated the whole thing, yet continued trying to get him to visit her while the restraining order was still in place, which he wisely avoided. Fast forward 6 months and they're back together. She claims she feels left out now that her friends are settling down, so my cousin is suddenly a valid option again. They're now expecting their second child. The worst part? His parents took out $15,000 in loans to save him from the legal trouble she caused. When they asked him to help pay it back, both he and his wife cut off all contact with them. It's heartbreaking to see how much his loyalty to her has cost him and his family. Story 19. I spent 10 years with my ex-partner, raising his kids and having a baby together, only to find out 18 months after we separated that he had been cheating on me for most of our relationship. About 2 years into our time together, he began an affair with another mom from the kids' school, and it carried on for years. When I messaged the woman, she revealed that he had told her, and everyone at the school, that I was his live-in au pair and not his partner. For a decade, the entire community watched us living as a couple, yet no one said a word to me about his affair. I worked at the school as a teacher and counselor, and even my friends there didn't tell me what was going on. The other woman said she confronted him when we publicly announced we were expecting a baby, realizing something wasn't right. He lied to her, claiming we had just gotten together. Meanwhile, he was taking his kids, the ones I was raising, to family outings, holidays, and even taking family photos with her and her children, all while keeping me in the dark. He even had his kids keep the secret from me. 4 years into our relationship, he proposed to me in front of his kids, claiming his divorce had finally come through. It hadn't. He was still married to his first wife. When I confronted him years later, he admitted everything. He also told me he was still close friends with his ex-wife, spoke to her weekly, and was angry that she moved to another state when we had our daughter because it broke his heart. For a long time, I blamed myself, thinking I must have been naive or stupid to miss all the signs. But as I got older, I realized it wasn't about me. It's normal to trust and love your partner. The problem wasn't me, it was him. Some people are just liars and cheaters, and they do this to anyone. That realization gave me some peace, but it doesn't erase the betrayal I felt for so many years. Story 20. When I was 14 or 15, my cousins moved in with my family. First one, then the second, and eventually their stepsister. They came to live with us because their father, who had married an abusive woman, was incapable of taking care of them. Over time, the stepsister left on her own, and the first cousin was asked to leave due to how she treated her sister. Eventually, it was just me, my mom, my brother, my sister, and my second cousin, SC, who I came to see as a sister. Around that time, my mom started dating a man we'll call C. After 10 years of focusing on us, it seemed like she finally found someone who made her happy. He was fun, supportive, and came to watch my school plays. He became a part of our family and we all accepted him. Tsetsi and I shared a room with a bunk bed. Her bed was the bottom double and mine was the top single. When she stayed at her mom's overnight, her mom was a raging alcoholic, I would sometimes sleep in her bed because I'd never had a double bed before. One night while she was away, I noticed something stuffed inside her pillowcase. I reached in and pulled out a belt and a shirt, C's shirt. It's sure C kept a diary, and I knew that was where I'd find answers. What I read shattered me. After everything my mom had done for her, giving her a new start in a safe home, SC had been sleeping with C for months. She was 17, he was 41. That was 14 years ago. SC and C stayed together for a long time, but recently I found out that she's now single and heartbroken after being betrayed. Meanwhile, C is apparently still not single. It's a bitter twist of irony that leaves me feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief at how things turned out. Story 21. My older brother started dating my best friend when she was 16, and he was 19. She told me about her feelings for him, but was afraid I wouldn't support their relationship. While I found it slightly uncomfortable, I decided to support them because they were both lonely and seemed to connect well. At first, everything seemed fine, but I started noticing inconsistencies in her behavior. She would claim to love things like kickboxing, but never participated with us, saying she didn't like sweating. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe she was trying to impress my brother. Their relationship lasted about 3 months before she called me, saying she wanted to break up with him because her parents didn't approve. I told her it was her decision to make, not her parents'. Later she called again, crying, saying she'd ended things and was proud of herself. I supported her, but knew my brother would be crushed. He had always talked about her like she was the center of his world. Not long after, I discovered the texts she had sent him when breaking up. They were cold and cruel. She told him their relationship was never meaningful, that he wasn't interesting, and that she never thought they'd work. This devastated him, and for the first time, I had to comfort him as his little sister. He confided in me, and seeing him so heartbroken made me resent her. A few days later, she joked at the mall about getting with someone's rich dad, which her older brother shut down, saying, "Time and place." Her behavior and attitude started to change, and she became distant. Her family also started acting strangely. Her mom would end conversations abruptly, her dad accused me of being disrespectful, and her baby cousin became snooty. Eventually, she ghosted me and my other best friend, blocking us without explanation. Her mom began posting passive-aggressive fake friend messages on social media, tagging her daughter and saying things like, "Friends are temporary, but family is forever." I had never spoken poorly of her, always encouraged her, and thought of her as family. I was devastated. A year later, she reached out and revealed the truth. My brother had been trying to isolate her, telling her she wasn't his type, that her family was controlling, and that he was the only one she could trust. He even lied, saying I constantly talked down about her and encouraged her to cut ties with me. It was shocking to realize that my own brother had gone so far to manipulate her and ruin my friendship, just so he could have her for himself. It was a betrayal I never expected from either of them. Story 22. In university, I was part of a close-knit group of friends who prided ourselves on building an intentional community. We held weekly dinners, pooled resources, and often opened our doors to help those in need. Many in the group were budding activists involved in issues around race and LGBTQ plus discrimination. One of my coworkers at the time was going through a lot. She'd been kicked out of her house for being a lesbian and was grieving her grandmother's declining health. I introduced her to the group, and we all welcomed her with open arms. I even spoke to my mom, who agreed to let her live rent-free in my old room until she could get back on her feet. A few weeks into this arrangement, my mom called me, saying the girl had to leave because things weren't right. This caused a huge stir in my friend group. The girl accused my mom of being homophobic, which led to me being essentially ostracized from the group, except for a few who felt something about the girl's story didn't add up. I went home to find my old room completely trashed. Garbage bags everywhere, dirty dishes thrown away instead of washed, and just an overwhelming mess. On top of that, my mom revealed the girl was using drugs, was an alcoholic, and had been verbally abusive toward her. The girl begged not to be kicked out, but we gave her until the end of the month. My grandfather and someone from the group helped her move out. While cleaning the room afterward, I found several checks in the name of her late grandmother, which she had been using to buy expensive art supplies. We contacted her family and discovered the truth. Her parents hadn't kicked her out because she was gay, but because she had been stealing from her dying grandmother, who she was supposed to be caring for. She had also been committing fraud by using her grandmother's Social Security money. We reported her for fraud, but when I tried to explain what had happened to the group, they didn't believe me. Only one person, who had experience with addiction in their family, recognized the signs. It was heartbreaking to lose so many friends who refused to see the truth and continued to label my mom as hateful based on the girl's lies. Story 23. This story still unsettles me, and I'm not sure what to make of it. A few years ago, I was living with my then boyfriend, now ex. The relationship wasn't great. He was clearly struggling with mental health issues but refused to seek help. As a result, he was emotionally abusive and neglectful. One night, during a seemingly casual conversation, he opened up about something that still haunts me. He admitted to killing someone who had solely assaulted his sister. I don't know if this was true or a manipulation tactic, but it terrified me. He knew I was already afraid of him. He had threatened to hit me before, and this confession only made things worse. One day while he was at work, I went onto his computer to find a game to transfer to mine. We didn't have internet access. While searching, I found a disturbing collection of files, documents on how to hide a body, guides on the best ways to kill someone, instructions on building bombs, and a copy of the anarchist's cookbook. I confronted him about it, telling him I didn't feel safe knowing he had those files. His response was chilling. "I'm keeping them, and I don't care about you, myself, or anyone else." That was the breaking point. I ended the relationship on the spot, and he moved out shortly after. Not long after he moved out, my little gray cat went missing. I still don't know if it was a coincidence, but I never found him, and it breaks my heart to think of what might have happened. On a brighter note, 2 years ago, a stray cat wandered into my yard. I gave him a piece of steak, and he's been with me ever since. He's currently asleep on my chest as I write this, and I'm grateful every day for his comforting presence. Story 24. My uncle is one of the best family men I've ever known. Growing up, he was like a father to me since my dad wasn't around much. He's one of the funniest people I know and absolutely amazing with kids. He even learned to play Minecraft at 60 just to bond with his nephew and ended up loving it. My mom always says he's the best brother she could ever have. But I've learned that his past was far darker than the loving man he is today. As a teenager, my uncle was nothing like the person I know now. He tormented my mom, his younger sister, and at 17 he was arrested for a violent gang-related crime and disowned by the family. While in prison, he was jumped and disfigured by a race gang. After being released, he lived with a biker gang, and for the next 20 years, my family didn't know if he was alive or dead. At some point, he went back to prison for manslaughter. Eventually, he married and decided to leave that life behind. But it wasn't easy. He was harassed and coerced by gang members into doing horrible things he'd rather not talk about. It wasn't until a large crackdown on the gangs wiped them out that he was finally free to start over. Most of the family, especially the younger generations, don't know about his past. Even among the older members, very few know the full extent of what he went through or what he did during those years. By the time I was born, the man I knew was bubbly, loving, and full of joy. It wasn't until my 20s that I learned the truth from my mom and uncle. Family became the most important thing to him, and he feels immense guilt for the way he treated my mom when they were younger. Now he is a fiercely protective and loving brother to her and a father figure to me. Despite his past, I couldn't ask for a better man to have in my life. He may have been one of the worst people back then, but today he is undoubtedly the best man I know. Story 25. A few years ago, I was part of a regular D&D group with some people my partner met through work. Even after he left that job, we continued playing with the group for several months. One night, one of the players, G, didn't show up. He didn't call or text, which was unusual. A few days later, he messaged the group, apologizing and promising to be back for the next session. At the following session, G, who lived nearby, asked if he could hang out at our place afterward. We agreed, and after some casual conversation, he asked if we wanted to know why he had missed the last game. He made us promise not to tell anyone, and we reluctantly agreed. G confessed that he had been at the police station because they had confiscated his phone and laptop. When we asked why, he admitted he had been looking up child pornography. He claimed he had never touched anyone and explained that since he couldn't afford therapy, he had turned to this instead and was detained as a result. My partner and I were stunned and didn't know what to say. The conversation shifted to the cost of therapy and the limitations of free counseling, but we couldn't get past what we had just learned. Eventually, G left, and we were left feeling suffocated by the weight of the revelation. After some deliberation, we contacted him and told him we no longer felt comfortable being around him. We asked him to leave the D&D group, but assured him we wouldn't tell the others what he had shared. He agreed and exited the group. For weeks, I felt uneasy in my own home. G had been there. He knew where we lived. It didn't help that he had a young child of his own. While I hoped the police were managing the situation and that his visitation rights were being addressed, the thought of someone like that having any access to children was deeply unsettling. We finished the campaign and drifted from the group over time. I kept my promise not to tell anyone about G, but I've often wondered if I made the right choice. The idea that someone you think you know can hide something so horrifying still haunts me. I don't live in that house anymore, and I try not to think about him, but the memory still gives me chills. Story 26. There was an older Croatian man in my community known as a saint for his incredible generosity. He helped countless immigrant families settle in Canada, teaching them English, giving them a place to stay, helping them find work, and even connecting them with local job opportunities. Despite his wealth, he lived alone and never married or had children. He was deeply respected, but the truth of his past was far darker than anyone imagined. My grandmother, who knew him well, told me his story. During World War II, he was forced to serve as an assassin for the Ustaša, a Croatian extremist army influenced by the Nazis. One day, he and his best friend stumbled upon a hoard of Nazi gold. They stole as much as they could carry and had to literally kill their way out of Europe to escape with their lives. They fled to Canada, where the stolen gold netted each of them nearly $100,000 at the time, equivalent to about $2 million today. A few years later, his best friend passed away and left all of his money to the saint. Overwhelmed by guilt for the atrocities he had committed, he spent the rest of his life using his wealth to help others, especially fellow immigrants, start new lives in Canada. He never returned to Croatia. Despite his dark past, the man was revered for his generosity. His funeral was simple yet drew an enormous crowd. Dozens of families came to pay their respects to the man who had changed their lives for the better. My grandmother, who had always spoken highly of him, hinted that she may have had feelings for him, but she remained loyal to my grandfather, even after his passing in the 1970s. The saint's story is one of redemption. A man who carried unimaginable guilt but dedicated his life to trying to make amends. It's incredible how someone with such a dark past could become a beacon of hope for so many, though the weight of his history likely followed him until the end. Story 27. My parents used to live in a rural community where neighbors were far apart, but everyone knew each other. Among them was an elderly couple who lived 3 houses away. They were kind people. The wife tended to her garden, and the husband was always helping neighbors with his truck, even driving those without cars to a bus stop 13 kilometers away. He once drove my 13-year-old sister there during this time, which was almost 10 years ago. One day, they both seemed to disappear. For nearly a month, their house was silent. The garden was neglected, the truck sat unmoved, and their cats wandered off to other neighbors for food. Concern grew, and after 2 weeks, some neighbors went to the police. The authorities dismissed their concerns, saying the couple had been hospitalized after a serious accident and couldn't have visitors. A month later, the couple reappeared. The husband was now in a wheelchair and could barely speak, and the wife had scars on her face and neck. When asked about the accident, they avoided the subject. People assumed it was post-traumatic stress and stopped prying, instead trying to support them. Over the next year, they adjusted to a new routine. The wife would wheel her husband around the neighborhood, chatting with people while he stayed silent but gentle in demeanor. About a year and a half after the accident, he passed away. A few months later, she died too. It wasn't until their son came to handle their affairs that the truth emerged. The accident was actually an attack. The husband, suffering from a senile crisis, had stabbed his wife 16 times with a kitchen knife. He only stopped when he fell and broke his hips. Despite her injuries, she crawled to the phone and called their son, who rushed them both to the hospital. Her wounds, though numerous, were not deep, allowing her to survive. Their son explained that she never resented her husband for the attack. She insisted on keeping it a secret because she didn't want the community to shun him or treat him poorly. Her husband never recovered mentally, believing everyone around him to be spies and threats. To this day, it's hard to process how such a kind couple could have endured such a violent situation without anyone knowing. Story 28. When I was 26-27, my best friend went to prison for causing death by dangerous driving. He had no prior criminal record, showed full remorse, and behaved well in prison, so he served about 15 months of a 2-year sentence. During this time, I visited him 3 or 4 times, traveling with his fiancée to the prison, which was 3 hours from our hometown in southwest England. On the drives down, his fiancée and I made small talk. I got along with her well enough, though some people, my girlfriend at the time and other friends of my best mate, had a poor opinion of her. During these trips, she often emphasized how much she loved him and couldn't wait for him to come home. She said she'd wait as long as it took. Given that his mother had passed away while he was incarcerated, I was relieved to hear he at least had her support. However, there were rumors, even before he went to prison, that she was unfaithful. Neither of us believed them. It didn't seem possible. He was either at work or home with her before he was jailed. How could she have been cheating? On our last trip together, about 3 months before his release, we stopped for snacks. She left her phone on the seat while she went into the shop. A message popped up, and the opening line read, "I can't wait to F you again this." That was all I saw, but it was enough. I sat in the prison visitors hall that day, watching my best friend and his fiancée talk about their future, their excitement to get married, all the while knowing she was sleeping with someone else. I couldn't tell him, not while he was grieving his mother in prison. I worried it might push him to harm himself. He found out soon after his release. She left him 2 weeks before their wedding, causing them to lose the £5,000 deposit they'd paid for the venue. It turned out she had been sleeping with her manager at work from the day he went to prison, and possibly even before. I was heartbroken for him. He'd already lost so much, and to find out that his fiancée had been betraying him for years was a cruel blow. It's something that still makes me angry to think about, even now. Story 29. When I was in high school, I had some issues with my stepmom and had to leave home. A good friend's family kindly let me stay with them so I could finish school. My friend was mixed race with a tall white father and a petite Asian mother. One day we went out to the woods to drink some beers and share stories. One friend told us about how his brother had died as a passenger in a fleeing car. The driver had taken his friends along for what he claimed was an errand, but it turned out the errand was raping his own aunt. When the cops showed up, the driver fled and crashed, killing my friend's brother. It was a horrifying story. Then the friend I was staying with shared his own story. His father had gone to a college reunion, reconnected with an old flame, and decided he wanted a divorce. He had a family meeting where he told them about the affair and his plans to leave. Everyone knew what to expect, or so they thought. One night, while my friend and his sister were watching TV, they heard strange noises from upstairs. Initially, they thought their parents were laughing and might have reconciled. But then they heard a scream and rushed upstairs. What they found was horrifying. Their father had their mother in a headlock, and there was blood everywhere. His father's eyelid was hanging off his face. It turned out that his mother had attacked him while he was napping, hitting him with an axe and then trying to finish the job with a kitchen knife. That night, I returned to their house and made sure to be on my absolute best behavior for the rest of my stay. Story 30. I used to go to a lot of festivals with the same group of people. Close friends, friends of friends, and occasionally new faces. One guy in the group, let's call him Jay, was someone I only ever saw at festivals. We got along great, always had good conversations and vibed well at parties. While we weren't close enough to hang out outside of festivals, I still considered him a friendly presence in the group. One day, someone from the group sent a news article in our WhatsApp chat. The article showed a blurred picture of someone who looked disturbingly like Jay. The name didn't match at first, but later, we realized the article used his full name, not the nickname we knew him by. The story said that the man had driven his car into an oncoming truck. Initially, it was reported as an accident, and we were all worried. Later that same day, more details emerged, and it turned out it wasn't an accident. It was suicide. Jay had intentionally crashed into the truck while being pursued by the police. The police had been following him because he was a major suspect in a pedophile trafficking ring. Worse, he had been caught on camera in an Eastern European country fleeing the scene of a murder. The news left us all reeling. Jay had seemed so normal, so friendly. We had shared laughs, hugs, and countless good times. But as more information came out, it became clear he was involved in horrifying crimes, including unspeakable acts against children. Even now, years later, I feel sick thinking about it. The idea that someone I trusted and had good times with was secretly living such a dark, monstrous life still makes my skin crawl. It's a chilling reminder that you can never truly know someone. Story 31. At my previous job, I had a boss who was a kind woman, but a bit of a drinker. She knew I'd been through some horrendous experiences with my ex-husband, and one evening, after too much alcohol in her coffee cup, she decided to share her darkest secret. She had taken time off work the previous year, officially for a ruptured ovarian cyst. But that wasn't the truth. She revealed that her ex had raped her, strangling her with a dressing gown cord until she passed out. This assault resulted in her becoming pregnant. She was petite and didn't show, nor did she tell anyone about the pregnancy. At about 7.5 months, she went into labor and gave birth to a boy who, she said, looked exactly like his dad. She felt she couldn't parent the child, so she gave him up for adoption and used the ruptured cyst story to explain her absence from work. Her rapist ex didn't know about the child, and she was terrified he would kill her or search for the boy if he ever found out. She mentioned that the adoption was closed, but part of the agreement allowed the child to look for his birth parents when he turned 18. This possibility haunts her every day. The next day, she either couldn't remember telling me or chose to act like she didn't. I left that job not long after, but I still see her occasionally. She's now in a long-term relationship with a new partner, but I've overheard people asking her, "When are you settling down and starting a family?" Or, "You don't have any kids yet?" I see her flinch every time. My heart breaks for her and the weight of her hidden pain. Story 32. I used to work with someone who pretended to have cancer for years. How they managed to pull it off still baffles me. They lied to their friends, family, partner, and even their children. At work, they became close to many colleagues, including me. We all thought they were genuinely sick. They went so far as to have coworkers drop them off at the hospital for treatments and then pick them up later. This person climbed to a prominent position in a national organization, and during that time, we organized a fundraiser to help cover their treatment in America. We raised over $50,000 and they took the trip, claiming it was for treatment. Later, we found out it was just a vacation. At that point, we were under the belief that the treatment was their last hope, and they only had months to live. Their partner even organized a rushed wedding so they could be married before they passed away. The truth unraveled when the organization began noticing inconsistencies in their story. An investigation revealed they didn't have cancer at all. It was an elaborate web of lies. They were ultimately charged with fraud. The betrayal shocked everyone who trusted and cared for them. It's still hard to process how someone could deceive their closest loved ones to such an extent. Story 33. My mom passed away 3 years ago at 48. After her passing, we were given some of her belongings, including her diaries and journals. Reading through them broke my heart. She wrote about things none of us knew she endured. Being beaten, having a bowl of hot pasta thrown at her, which scalded her face and chest, and being raped while violently ill and throwing up. There were so many dark secrets that she carried with her to her grave. Looking back, it hurts that she didn't confide in me. I was her firstborn, and though I was a handful as a child, I knew I was her favorite. She used to light up with a massive smile whenever I visited and cried when I left, even though I only lived 10 miles away. At the time, I thought it was just because she loved me so much. Now I wonder if it was because she felt safe when I was around and feared being alone. I wish she had told me. She knew I would have acted to protect her no matter what. She was my queen, and I would have done anything for her. Now I carry the weight of knowing how much she suffered in silence and how I wasn't able to shield her from it. Story 34. Growing up, the story of how my grandmother died was always presented as a tragic accident. The family told us that in the 1980s, she worked with the police and was killed during a robbery gone wrong. Apparently, the robbers tried to steal her car and purse, and when they discovered her police-related work items inside, they killed her. That was the narrative my siblings and I were given, and we never questioned it, especially since my mom was deeply affected by the loss. She was very young when it happened. Years later, after my great-grandparents passed, my mom had to sort through the family house in inheritance matters. During that process, she discovered the truth, which was much darker than we had ever imagined. My grandmother struggled with severe mental health issues, and the stress of raising 2 toddlers with my grandfather frequently absent due to work only worsened her state. One day, she locked my mom and her sister in another room for a nap. While they were asleep, she took her own life in the living room. The children were only let out of the room when their father returned home to find the devastating scene. This was the 1980s, a time when mental health struggles were deeply stigmatized. The family chose to hush up the tragedy, crafting the robbery story instead. My aunt, who was from my grandmother's first marriage, went to live with her biological father, while my mom stayed with my grandfather. He, unfortunately, succumbed to alcohol poisoning a few years later. I only learned this because my mom and her sister recently started reconnecting after years of estrangement. During one of their conversations, my aunt confided that there are days when she feels like she just wants to give up, like mom. It's a haunting family truth that adds layers of complexity to my mom's pain and the life she's had to navigate.